All right, guys, here's the update on the car. Put it on the dyno yesterday. We got that other camshaft in it. And the camshaft we put in it was a off-the-shelf comp roller street blower turbo cam. It's actually a really small cam, probably smaller than anybody's gonna have in a big block. But I wanted to try it just to see what it'd do. And it's only like a 650 lift cam. I think the duration is 250 something, 260 something. Hey Luna. And as soon as I cranked the car up, it was great. Car fired up super quick, sounded crisp, idled good, revved harder than anything that I've had in a long time. It actually revved about like a nitrous motor, so that was sounding good. I was feeling good about that. And put it on the dyno, and it actually was doing really good. The first dyno I pulled with the big twin cam in it, it did make but 495 horsepower at 3 pounds of boost, which, you know, I knew that was like really way off. First hit on this at the same boost, I'm just running on springs, it made right at 700. So thinking, okay, we going the right direction now. So made a whole bunch of pulls. The most boost I made yesterday on it was like 18, 19 pounds, and it was doing great. It made what did it make? Like 1,240 horsepower. I still think that's a little lower than what I'm expecting. I feel like it should make a little more than that, but I think the turbo exhaust housing is holding us back. For some reason, I thought this had the big housing on it, but it just has the 124 housing. So I ordered the 140 housing from Jose. So it's on its way. It'll be here Friday. So I'm thinking that there is maybe 100 horsepower, possibly even more than that, just in swapping the housings. So I think if it did pick up that would put me where I think the car should be. I know what this motor combination is made before. Years ago, we had it in the Mustang. This same motor combination on intercooled gas. I know people who bought the car after we had it, they put it on their dyno, and I think they made 1,800 and something horsepower at 30 pounds of boost, which is fine. I mean, the car ran good, no doubt about it. Whenever we got the car back and worked on it a little bit, with that same engine, it ended up going 430s at 180 on 275s in a 3,350 pound car. So it can make a crap ton of power. But anyway, I made a bunch of dyno pulls yesterday. I think I made like 13 pulls. But I got up to the 18, 19 pound range, and I was just making pulls at that boost level. And the reason why I didn't try to push it anymore is because in this car, I've got the car set up with dual injectors. It cranks and runs and, you know, starts off on just a set of Deca 160 pound injectors. And I really like that because this thing is so crisp and clean. It doesn't milk the oil up. It's just wonderful with those smaller injectors. And then my ECU auto transitions and starts adding in fuel from the secondary injectors, which is a set of XX 700 pound injectors. So I played with that for a while and was on the phone with Steve, that he's one of the big Max ECU guys, and he helps me a lot whenever I run into little things. But I was having issues with not getting them to transition very well. So we played with that for most of the pulls yesterday and ended up getting them transitioning really good. It's starting to come around really good now. But here, that's all the good. You know, everything was great about the whole thing, but there's one big lesson that I learned in this. Ever since I've been dynoing this car on the dyno, even with the other cam in it, whenever I would start the pull, I would notice a weird sound. And when I'm making the dyno pull, I have a headset on, so it muffles down a lot of sound. But with the headset on, I could hear this sound distinct. And it was a weird sound. I've never really heard this sound before. And to me, it sounded like a U-joint going out, just this clicking, weird clicking or rackety sound. So in my mind, I was thinking, okay, we've been through these transmissions and all kinds of transmission stuff. Maybe there's something we got weird in the transmission and it just makes some sound. But this sound would only happen at the beginning of the pull when it first loads the motor, and the motor's in the lower RPM range, like when it's in the lower to mid 6,000 range. It would make this sound, and then as soon as the RPM got a little higher, the sound would clear up and go away. If I took the headset off my head, you could not hear that sound, which was weird. It's like the headset muffled down everything except that. And I just finally said, heck, let's stop thinking about it, which was the mistake, because I found out the hard way what that sound was. The last pass I made, it shit a head gasket out. And I was like, man, what the world? And then it just as soon as that happened, it dawned on me. I'm like, you know what? That noise that I've been hearing this whole time is the motor labor knocking. It's actually detonating whenever that power comes in from more than likely a little too much timing. I did have my timing set pretty crisp. I thought it was in a good spot. It didn't show anything on the plugs because it didn't stay in that detonation zone for very long. It's just right at the beginning of the pull, and then it pulls through it, and it's clean as a whistle the rest of the way. So I never saw that on the plug. But we did see signs, and we couldn't explain it at the time. After the first quite a few pulls last week, we cut the oil filter open just to see what it looked like, and it looked pretty good, about what you expect out of the first oil change. But, which I'm colorblind, so I couldn't see this, but Brian said, hey, there's this green flakes in here, these green flakes. Like, okay, I don't know what green flakes are coming out of the motor. And after we thought about it for a while, he said, that looks like this coating that's on the head gaskets. And I was like, okay, that's not making any sense. I don't know why it would have anything like that. So we were kind of confused, but the signs were there. We didn't think about it hard enough. But what it had been doing is it had been detonating and probably lifting the head a little bit, shooting a little bit of compression through there, and blowing a little bit of coating out into the motor, into the oil. So lessons learned, some valuable lessons. So on the number 8 side over here at the firewall, yeah, the head gasket is hanging out, and I'm scared of pulling the head, even though it was just for a split second, because as soon as I felt something weird and I also saw a glow from the firewall area, I was out of the gas. So, there's no major hole blown in there, but I'm just hoping that it pushed the gasket and didn't burn up very much of the block or the head. I'm hoping the damage will be very minimal and that we can weld up and slap another head gasket on there and go at it again and get the timing down. And just to let you know what the timing and stuff was in the area that it blew the head gasket, the air fuel ratio was around 4-to-1. Sometimes it hovered in the 14s, but usually around 4-to-1 in that area. And the timing, I believe, was 32. And I think the 32 is the problem. And I think the 32 is mainly the problem in that 6,000 RPM range, where the motor is making the maximum torque it's going to make. And kind of goes back to the principle of these guys that are making the LSs do amazing on stock bottom ends, is they've learned that too, because they've learned to pull timing in those areas, and generally you can put the timing back on the top end. So when we get it back together, I'm going to go a little bit safer on it. I'm going to pull more timing in that area, and probably even pull the max timing on the top end down just a little bit. Even though I think it was clearing up fine and didn't have any problem on the top end, I'll be a little more safer this time. Probably throw just a taste more fuel to it too. Usually I do run my cars a little on the richer side, but I was trying to get a nice clean tune-up. So, which 4-to-1 is generally considered pretty good because it's not high boost yet. Like I said, 18, 19 pounds of boost isn't really bad. So I felt like I was safe, but apparently I was not. But I did learn, if I hear a weird sound like that again, I will understand what I'm hearing, because that's the first time I've ever heard that sound. on the dyno like that, but that's obviously what it was. The motor was laboring really hard in that mid 6,000 range, and it was hurting itself. So we're going to get the heads off, get it cleaned up, and hopefully very little to repair. Slap another head gasket on there and go at it again and see. Like I said, the power is going in the right direction now. I'm thinking where it's at now, if I was at the 3,000 or 30 pound of boost level, it should definitely be around 2,000 horsepower to the wheels, which is pretty good. This dyno is a little stingy. It's not going to give me any stupid numbers, but you know, I see a lot of people with these really high numbers. It doesn't make sense, because if you just think about the math of it, if you just look at what does a motor make on motor, like my LS cars, they will make 1,500 horsepower at 30 pounds of boost. I've had several different LS motors, and they all seem to make around the same. But if you think about it, they're all probably on motor a 500 horsepower motor. So just theoretically, at 30 pounds of boost, that should be 1,500 horsepower. So that's within the math. It sounds good. So even though this is a big block, it's not a huge big block. It's just a 509, so it's less than 100 cubic inches bigger than my LS's. So let's say NA, this motor, which is a low compression motor, this motor doesn't have much compression. So let's say this motor on the dyno on motor would make 600 horsepower on motor. Well, then it's pretty much close to the theory of what it should be doing right now. So it may be off a little bit. Like I said, I think that exhaust housing is going to make a big difference on that. And, you know, because that's what's driving my back pressure up pretty high. I never looked at the number on the turbo. I just assumed that it already had the big housing on it. But when this turbo was spec'd, it was spec'd for my LS's, so it had a smaller housing on it. And did good on my LS. I mean, well, matter of fact, the last passes I made in this car with the LS in it, it went a 458 at, I think, 163 or something like that with a 110 60 foot. So it really wasn't having much problems on the LS, but it probably could have stood to even have the bigger housing on it too, because the turbo still lit up and spooled up really good. So that's about it. You know, there was a lot of good in this and a little bit of bad at the end, but there's a lot of learning and education from what happened. So I'll be a little better equipped for this engine to get it tuned a little closer. At least I know now that, you know, the timing's a little bit crispy for it, so I can back that down and get that back in the right spot and get it a little better, because I know the motor's got extreme potential. I've always been a fan of this motor. I've had this combination several times in the past, and it's always been super impressive. But learning curve for what I'm trying to do now. But and a learning curve on that camshaft too. It's pretty neat to see that small of a camshaft really does run good. I mean, they only call for it having like a 7,000 RPM range, but I pulled it all the way up to 7,500, and it had no signs that it was stopping. It was pulling really good, and everything looked as clean as it's ever looked on the tune, other than the motor was not happy from that timing down low. So we're gonna get that taken care of, and then it should be heading in a good direction. I was looking forward to going and making some just some test passes this weekend, but I have a feeling probably won't be able to get this thing back together by then. Like I said, cross your fingers and let's hope that the damage is minimum and easy to fix. If it's just a little minor aluminum burnage, hopefully we can just throw some weld on there, clean it up, and slap it back together, because the motor doesn't have water in it. It's all solid block, solid head, so that should make the repair a little easier. And so we'll patch it back up and see. But until then, next time get some more information, I'll spread it. Like I said, we're pretty transparent here. I like to show people the good and the bad, which seems like here lately I've had a little more bad than good, but it's coming. I mean, I don't get too disappointed sometimes, because as long as I can learn something from it, I feel a little better about it. So I've learned a little more on this setup, and what I did wrong, and what we did right and what it needs. So we're going to get on that and get that fixed up, and hopefully here pretty quick we can be back on it and be fine-tuning it again and get it where I can go ahead and crank the boost on up and make some pulls in the 35 pound range. Go ahead and see that, hopefully see that 2,000 plus horsepower number. That'd make me feel pretty good. And you know, I know there's some people out there probably say, oh, 2,000 at 30 pounds of boost, that's still not strong. Well, it actually is, because like I said, a lot of these dyno pulls that you see on the internet don't even add up theoretically. I know when I had the Hemi in here, we took it to the dyno once and we made a pull, and at 30 pounds of boost, it made, I think it was 2,200 and something horsepower. And you'd think, oh, that's all 20. I thought them motors made 4,000 horsepower. Well, that's what it made, and we took it to the track, and it went a 420 at 180 at that boost level. So apparently that's actually some pretty good power. So sometimes you can't get hung up on numbers, because I know there's a lot of dynos out there that magically give these ridiculous horsepower numbers on motors that you're thinking, okay, that motor's this cubic inch and it made that boost and it made this horsepower. Math doesn't quite add up on that. So I like to know that these numbers that I'm seeing do sound more realistic whenever I throw the formula on the paper, just on what it should do. So it's not far off. Even this motor at the 1,240 horsepower that it made yesterday is not, to me, not way far off, but I think I still feel like it should be another 100 horsepower at that level, maybe even a little more than that. And I'm feeling pretty confident that the exhaust housing is where that's going to be at. Get that back pressure freed up and the turbo not choking down a little bit, and I think it's going to make a little bit more. But anyway, till next time, catch y'all later.